ball rolling. He says theatre is the most perfect artistic form of coercion. If you wish to change somebody's opinion, bring him to the theatre. Changing opinions was hitherto considered to be literature's responsibility, never theatre's. But Augusto Boal never followed the trend. He was one of the trendsetters of the current postmodern times, the previous century's latter portion, as things will reveal in my talk. What is agitprop theatre? What is agitation propaganda? It all began after the Bolshevik Revolution of Russia in 1917. आप लोगों ने इतिहास में पढ़ा होगा सन 17 की रूसी क्रांति, the Red Revolution, the infamous revolution which turned the world order upside down because it introduced the world to the success of a socialistic order where people were considered to be equal. There were no, class differences. It was there that this term was coined, and I shall quote. Agitprop is abbreviated from agitation propaganda, the Russian name for which is agistasia propaganda. It's a form of political strategy in which the techniques of agitation and propaganda are used to influence and mobilize public opinion, especially through the tools and crafts available in theatre. Now, it has two terms. One is agitation, the other is propaganda. Both of them are dealt with by different segments of the society. Propaganda naturally would come to people who are in control of the power, who wish to convey something to the masses and who would like that contrived opinion to sink in, to pass on. And that was defined by one very great scholar, Marxist scholar, Georgy Plekhanev, which says promulgation of several ideas to a few while raising awareness about an issue is propaganda. वो आज भी चल रहा है. But the form has shifted, the number has changed, the medium has shifted because it has given us social interactive media today. But propaganda goes on, and it is not merely in the hands of the ruling class or the imperialists. But at that point of time it was. And the other, which is of more importance to people like me who work in theatre, are the agitating crowd. People who come out on the streets, who have to ask for something, to demand for something, to form the making of a revolution. And that is defined as using emotional material to get people to be active by promulgating one idea to several people who speak in the same voice as a mob, more oftenly labeled as a mob. Now, this is what the backdrop of agitation propaganda theatre was, but it initiated from Russia and moved on to Germany and Britain and other Western countries much before it came to Asia. And when it did come to Asia, it simultaneously sprung up in a lot of countries like Japan, India, and if you consider Eurasia to be a part of the whole system, parts of Soviet Union, which had then become a union, and countries of Europe which were not initially a part of that initiative. Russia had 1920s a full-fledged ministry called the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Soviet Union, which had a department devoted to that. Can you imagine? And Germany had ATBD, an Arbeiter Theater Bund Deutschland, which was known as Workers' Theatre League, where agitation propaganda theatre was practiced. But that did not die out in the last century. It's barely 100 years now. We are in 2020s, and it began in 1920s. And it has gone from strength to strength. But what has changed is that people have stopped flocking in millions or thousands as they used to earlier, because there were fewer things that people wanted in life, unlike now. We are living in a much complex society, in a much divided opinioned composition. The homogeneity of any class has shifted. It is no longer the same. And this is similar the world over. So people don't have in bigger number the same demands. But it doesn't mean that it has gone away. It doesn't mean that those propagandist elements of the ruling class have suddenly gone underground. They have changed means. They've shifted focus. They've acquired newer dimensions. But they are taking that theatre along and ahead. And it doesn't figure in literature, unfortunately. People write about it. They critique it. They consider it as an historical occurrence, but it is not a form of literature as maybe a drama or a script or a screenplay, as something which is a prescription for a performance. Now, the Russian originator had two very interesting tools with them, which are still prevalent. They had the poster art to begin with, which is still prevalent in many societies. They began printing posters and pasting in various parts, prominent parts of their city, to mobilize people's opinions. I had one to show you, but I'll try and explain what it says. It showed people, emaciated people, asking for something. There were 4 segments of the poster. One said it was shivering from cold. So the pointing finger says, do you want to overcome cold? The other segment says, do you want to overcome hunger? A very hungry looking person, almost reduced to a skeleton, is running after food. The third person says, do you want to drink something warm? Do you want to improve your social standing? Get a good house? These are the 4 prominent segments. वो पुराने ज़माने में जो रोटी कपड़ा मकान का जो डिमांड था. What if you want this? Then join the brigades of the labor. Industry चलानी है, worker बन जाइए. So when did that happen? When the peasantry was brought into the cities to provide man fodder for the industries to function. And when it began happening, things didn't stop. It became the trend, which is still happening. One of the biggest problems of developing countries, even now, is that of mass migration of workers from the rural places to the over-urbanized, terribly polluted, difficult to live in urban dwellings. And this is something very similar to what Dr. Bhati was pointing at. The other very interesting device that Soviet Rus of that time provided was having agitprop trains run. Can you imagine locomotives running from obscure stations to very far off places, catching hold of unwilling spectators, bundling them into locomotive cars, and bombarding them with propaganda material either through slideshows on the screen or through pamphlets or poorly and hastily printed booklets. Ab bhagenge kahan? You are bound in that compartment. And it was a propaganda train. And why did they get away with it? Because the socialist regime thought that we would want people to come to know what we are providing for them, how we are working in their favor. So this is a kind of theatre in action which history recognizes now. Then it was a gimmick. I hope you are with me as I'm tracing its trajectory to how the theatre has shifted to the present times. In Germany, there was this workers' theatre troupe called the Red Megaphones. The red color is prominent. I'm sure you understand its significance here. They were professional workers who worked in that, including Bertolt Brecht, Piscator, Wolf, Meissner, and they had amateur groups in that. And they talked about issues pertaining to workers, to agriculture, peasantry, to the common folk, and they were never documented. These are the best of theatre personalities. All their plays and write-ups which are available have nothing to do with their contributions on the agitprop theatre. And yet there is from where they derive and that resolve to do work which hails them as classics in their own right today.